Hi everybody, so this is going to be part one of our video for today, and we're going to carry it over into our weekend assignment. But what I'm going to do is walk you through the process for personal decision making that is going to help you analyze for yourself the dilemma that you wrote about yesterday. So you're not going to share that actual solution with anybody except me unless you want to, so don't worry about that. But it's important to me that I give you, before the end of the semester, an analytical way to approach dilemmas in your life that are probably scary, troubling. Like these kinds of questions are not a small deal in our lives. So it helps to have a process like this one that will help us, how do we systematically sort through what's important to us in a situation like this. Yes, what is it?
After yours, can I do mine?
Yes, you can do yours after me. So what we're going to do first is we want to think about what are the underlying moral questions that we're being triggered by. So triggered is actually a good word because usually we know that we're in the middle of a moral dilemma because something does not feel good to us. And so one of the questions that we've asked multiple times throughout the course is, do our emotions help us or hinder us in our ethical decision making? And so in my process, what I want to do is use that as a way to really investigate what is truly bothering you. Because sometimes the thing that seems to be the problem on the surface is not really, the real question at the base of it all. So to think about what are the underlying moral questions, to do this, I ask something like, what is really bothering me? And this might actually be a good thing to journal on, to do that free writing. There's definitely interesting information that can come out of that. So thinking about, what am I really asking? Is this a question about honesty or loyalty, or is it a question about my needs versus somebody else's needs? Is it a question about my duty to the world or to my talents or whatever it is, So really thinking about, what am I really asking? Yes, Lulu. I'm not done yet. Okay, so I know she's eager to be the next star. So, okay, so what's really bothering me? Now, the next step, and this is something that is my addition to this type of process that you might find in a textbook, but it's something that comes out directly out of our work. Now, going back to the question of emotions, do they help us or hinder us in our ethical decision making? Well, they're there. Right? So we have to acknowledge that because they may help us and they may also hinder us, right? It's not something that is an either or. It could be both at the same time. So here's what we need to do. We need to just acknowledge that and then maybe get them out of the way a little bit and also investigate them for some more insight into what's going on. So here I have process your emotions around it. And again, this is something that kind of comes from our discussion of care ethics, where we look at our emotions as useful moral information. Yes, what is it?
Mommy, this is a lot of talking.
It is a lot of talking, I know. She's not even ready for the rest of my classes yet. Okay, so here's a journaling process you can use for that. So step one, and this is free writing, again, not censoring yourself, not trying to show it to anybody, just really something that you do for yourself. List only the facts or the information that are about the scenario. So I try to think of myself as a journalist in this exercise where you're just going to write a paragraph where you only list what happens, right? Only list the facts. Can you sit a little more still so that it's not distracting to me? Step two is to describe only the emotions that you feel around this situation. So you're going to the other side of the coin here, where you're going to spend a paragraph of free writing everything that you feel, whether you feel you're justified or not in feeling those things, right? You feel them, let's get them out of the way, let's get them down onto the page. So step two is listing and describing only the emotions. And then step three in this process is to free write for about 5 minutes, where you basically create a mix of the previous two pieces. So you write from the perspective of mixing facts and emotions. And sometimes you've sort of clarified to yourself a couple of things by separating them, and then it can also help us to clarify more by putting them back together. So this process can kind of help us get some of that clarity about, what is really bothering us, what's really the dilemma that we're facing here, and then that will definitely help us in deciding how to solve it. Okay, so step three, the next thing we're going to do, and we haven't really used this word very much, it's been in our reading, but we're going to list all the stakeholders. So for this, think back to when we were talking about utilitarianism, and one of the most important steps was to consider everyone So all sentient beings who are going to be potentially affected by our decision. And we noted at that time that this could be a potentially very large pool. It could be the entire world, right? And so the stakeholders are going to be different depending on what the dilemma is, but you need to be clear on who is going to be impacted. And don't forget to include yourself, right? So your self-interest matters, but also other people's interests matter. The question that we really want to reflect on here is, what duties do we owe to each of these stakeholders? And we're going to have stronger duties towards some of them than towards others. We talked previously about the duties that we might owe towards family members and loved ones, right? So that's going to rank more importantly than my duty towards a stranger or towards somebody who is not my child. Now, when we're thinking about duties, we also haven't really seen a hugely formal way to identify these, but remember the prima facie duties, that list of duties that W.D. Ross compiles is actually really helpful to identify, right, what are the, we have somebody who's having a rough day. This is partly why I'm not going to finish our video. So, all right, let's not lose it here. I've got it all mixed up. There we go. So we're at the step of, listing the stakeholders and deciding what duties we owe to them. So try going through that, that list from W.D. Ross where, are there duties of fairness? Are there duties of gratitude? Excuse me. Are there duties of reparations where maybe harm was caused and you owe something to make up for that? Step 4 is to try on a variety of lenses. And so by lenses, we mean the different viewpoints that we've looked at. So they could be as simple as going down our list of theories and saying, well, what would a utilitarian say? What would a Kantian say? What would a virtue theorist say? This can include looking at people in your life who you consider to be moral exemplars, right? What would my grandmother say about this dilemma? Looking at different viewpoints, right? And then the last step, step 5, go with your instincts, okay? All right, I'm trying to do that here too. I'll put this back up. Go with your instincts. And so calling back the idea of natural law with, we all have somewhat of a blueprint that is potentially shared amongst humans. We can't prove it, but we also sort of know that it might be there. We've got a third child joining us now. And also we saw this idea with the moral intuition of Ross, where, we kind of have to acknowledge that there's something that can help guide us, right? We're not quite sure what it is, not quite sure where it comes from, but it might be there. Now, here's the thing. Your instincts, after you've done this whole process, your instincts are going to be much more finely tuned to be able to make this decision. So even though it's not going to be the kind of formulaic thing that will spit out an exact answer for you, by the time you get to step 5, you will have thought through enough that your educated guess, if that's what it's going to be, is still hopefully going to be pretty damn good. Mama. So I'm going to go take care of those people who are important to me, and I will follow up with you for our Friday assignment, in which we'll do the next half of this. Okay, thank you for your patience with me. Ouch, Mom.